Welcome back to another video. Before we get started with the list, I want to give you a little rundown of my history with the PSP. I originally got my PSP way back 8 years ago, in 2015, at a local mom and pop shop called Bogbean, and they're unfortunately out of business now, but somebody's trying to bring the store back, and hopefully it'll come back soon. But all the way back in 2015, which is crazy to think that was 8 years ago now. But I got my PSP for my birthday from this store, and when you buy a console from this place, they let you pick 2 games to take away free from like the loose game bin, and with your corresponding console. And I was able to pick up a few games for free. It was super cool. But I always had this deep-seated regret because at that same store, right next to the PSP, they were also selling a Vita for $150. It was an OLED model, and I was always had the buyer's remorse for not getting it. So much regret. But I eventually learned to really love my PSP. Later, I would eventually get the Vita, as you've seen in some previous videos, but it was just always something that I really wanted, and getting this PSP was something really different. I was always a Nintendo kid growing up. I recently did a DS top 10 video, and I had a lot to say about, when being super young and it being one of my first consoles. And just this game system was so important to me growing up. It was my first introduction to, hacking and homebrew and stuff. So it was so exciting to be, it was like 2015, and I was just having something really a lot more powerful or similarly powerful as my fucking 3DS, which was shocking to me because I didn't know something like this could have existed all the way back in 2005, 2006 when the PSP came out. This was really crazy for me to see. So jumping into the list, with number 10, one of the games I got was given to me by one of my friends for my birthday. He gave me 3 games from his PSP collection for my birthday, and one of them was Mega Man Maverick Hunter X. This was a very fun game. I had a lot of memories tied to this. A lot of time going over to that friend's house and playing on his PSP this game. And it was just a really awesome side scroller. The reason why it ranks number 10 on the list is mainly because it doesn't really hold up as well as I remember it being, and so many other things that but I really loved the animated intro. I would just remember watching that all the time. But it was one of the games that I loved. He gave it to me before I got the PSP, so I just had this case on my nightstand with the few other games he gave me. Just looking at it, I was like, I can't wait to play it. This looks like such a fun game. And I'm so happy to say that I did thoroughly enjoy it. I never beat it, but it's because Mega Man games to me have always been literally jump in, jump out kind of thing. And I just occasionally pick it up, beat a level or 2, and then I'll hop off and then not touch it for 3 years kind of thing. And but I did thoroughly enjoy my experience with it, and it feels very nice to play. Mechanically, I think it works really well. It fits on the platform, and I just have these really deep emotional connections to it. But as we go further on, I have much better connections and much more love for future games on this list. Number 9 was one of the games I got for free with the system from Bogbean. God of War Ghosts of Sparta. This game was really impressive. I wasn't expecting such a high quality console-like experience on a PSP. This was crazy to me. My most recent portable gaming experience at that time was my 3DS, which back in 2015, I barely touched because all I really played was Smash Brothers with my brother. And it was just a very complicated time for Nintendo, especially considering all the terrible games coming out for the Wii U. We were 2 years away from the Switch, so portable gaming wasn't exactly really fun, especially with the domination of really crappy smartphone games at the time. But Ghosts of Sparta was a really high quality experience, and I was thoroughly impressed and shocked with how awesome this game was. It was my first experience with God of War games, and just seeing how this beat 'em up 3D style adventure game was so fun. I never finished it again. I have a really bad habit of never finishing portable games if they're not super intriguing, because if I'm home, I'm going to be playing on like my Xbox or something. But I usually only played my PSP on road trips, with a few key exceptions. And this game was one of those games I did just mostly play on road trips. And this game was just a really fun, intriguing experience. Definitely unexpected fan of this franchise I became. So when eventually God of War got not remade necessarily, just rebooted on the PS4 with God of War and God of War Ragnarok, I was really excited for those games because of my first introduction with God of War being on the PSP. And I was just super impressed with how it was graphically, how it was visually. I was just overall a very easy to impress child, I guess. But moving on. Number 8 was a very long time coming game for me. I always wanted to play Final Fantasy Crisis Core. I remember watching the review from the completionist. God, it had to have been so many years ago now since I saw that review. It was a really, really good review, and that review made me want to play the game so desperately. It's an amazing game. I never quite understood like the roulette like system in the top. I didn't quite get it. I also didn't finish it. This was a more recent acquisition for the system, and it was okay. I don't know. It was really fun. It was really fun. The story and the gameplay was fantastic, but I just couldn't really get into it as much, and it was basically because I think I just built it up way too much in my head, and it was just still though I recognize it as a fantastic game. And one of the main games I highly recommend the most off this list is probably Final Fantasy Crisis Core. But the reason why it's so, it's number 7 on the list is because I just couldn't fully get myself into it like I probably hoped I could as a kid when I saw that completionist review. So for that, it stays at number 7. Number 7 isn't a game that I technically played that much on the PSP itself. It wasn't until much later that I played it on my Vita that I actually got to experience the full game. Because Persona 3 Portable is a fantastic game, truly, but one day I was just playing it like at home, like I think it was on the couch or something, and my parents were just like walking by. I think it was my dad who was walking past, and he saw what I was playing. He was looking at it, and he saw how you activate your powers is by shooting yourself, and he didn't like that. So he took the game away from me, saying I'm too young to be playing such an intense game, which I thought it was really, really funny, because I had like Call of Duty on my Xbox shit, so I was like, this is arbitrary. But I guess he just didn't like it was pushing, it had like suicidal themes in it. I don't know, but this game is amazing. One of the best entries in the Persona franchise, and it's getting a remake, which is a very disappointing remake from what my understanding of it is, but a remake nonetheless. This game is awesome. The few critiques I have of it are, it was, you don't actually run around in the 3D environment like you do the PS2 version. You have like these visual novel sort of like spaces you can look around in. It's very strange. I wasn't a big fan of it, but I really liked going through the dungeons, the combat, the story. Overall, it was a very interesting game, and especially once I did get to play it on my Vita, it was a wonderful experience. But because of me not getting to really enjoy it back in the day, and stuff like that, and just overall being a comparatively lesser experience than the original versions on PS2, it sits here at number 7. Number 6 isn't a game I, once again, didn't necessarily enjoy that much, but because of the community, because of other content I've seen, I can recognize this as a very good game. Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker is considered one of the best Metal Gear Solid games ever, and I just thought this game was so good, graphically and gameplay wise. It's just not my kind of game I usually play. I'm not a big Metal Gear Solid guy, but I do recognize it as good quality games, and definitely for a specific group of people, I'm just not that group of people personally. But this game did leave an impression on me, and I didn't have the world's largest PSP collection, but I did have this game, and I did enjoy my time I did spend with it. It was a very interesting, I loved the story of the game. It was just overall a very, appealing experience. Not good enough for me to ever really come back to. I did take a peek of it on my PSP on my PS Vita when the collection, I discovered there was a collection of the PSP Metal Gear Solid games that they put on the Vita. So I decided to look at that when I hacked my Vita. So most of my experiences are really from that version, and overall, I think this is a very high quality experience, and this is a must play for any PSP owners, just to give it a try, because you don't know, maybe you'll love this game more than I did, but this game I do recognize being one of the best told stories in portable gaming history, excluding the Switch because it's dock-in portable mode. But this game is truly amazing, and I highly recommend it, purely on the basis of its story and just it being a very crazily graphically impressive game for the time. Number 5 is a game that I do have a lot more experience in because I love me some 2D platformers. Number 5 being Little Big Planet for the PSP. This game I saw absolutely everywhere. I picked this game up from a flea market in 2018 with my uncle, because I really liked filling out my collection. I was always on the hunt for a specific game that we'll get to later, but this game was just so fun. It was just like a really nice lively experience. It really did leave an impression on me, because this game, just the graphics, the gameplay, I love me a good 2D side scroller, and with seeing how what would eventually become of Little Big Planet, the series, it was a really good time, this game was, and it was just one of the most highly recommendable games, because it really anybody could play. You didn't need to have a fundamental understanding of 3D beat 'em up style games. You didn't need to understand RPG mechanics. It was just go from left to right, get to the end, and then you're done. So it was a lot more simpler, a lot more understandable game. Like this, whenever I wanted to show somebody my PSP, I would put this game in the hand of them and say, hey, this is what a PSP is. I definitely got some of my relatives to buy PSPs and other PlayStation equipment because of this game, because of how easy it was for them to understand, and it was a good gateway into a different, system, because all my family was mostly Nintendo. Then I started really diversifying what I played games on, and they started saying, oh, there's so much more than just Nintendo stuff. So I see Little Big Planet on PSP as a gateway, as a good point of entry to show somebody PlayStation games. And that's why it sits at number 5 on this list. Number 4 was another of those games a friend of mine gave to me. MotorStorm Arctic Edge. I don't know why. I'm not usually a big, racing game guy outside of like Mario Kart and stuff, but this game fucking slaps. I don't know why. This game is just so good to me, but it just feels so good. The drifting, the turning, the cars just feel so good. And I was so excited to get this game from my friend, because when I would go over to his house and play on his PSP, this is one of the games I would play the most. It was so good. The controls felt so tight. Not particularly pretty to look at. The visuals were a little muddy, especially compared to when they re-released this game on PS2 for some reason. It did look a whole lot better on PS2 than it did on the PSP, which absolutely makes sense. But overall, this game just feels so much better on PSP. It had a home here. This was a well-designed game, and I've never really experienced any of these MotorStorm games usually. This is my only experience with these games. But that goes to show with how amazing this game was. I don't know how this game really got me into playing other kinds of racing games, but it did. It was just that good, that well-designed, utilized all the features of the PSP to the best of its ability. So that's why it maintains its spot at number 4, being just a downright impressive use of the PSP's hardware. So go play this game if you're really into racing games, or if you're not, this game could be what it takes to get you into racing games. highly recommend it. A solid number 4. Number 3 is Ratchet & Clank Size Matters. I got this game very, very recently compared to the rest of these games. I picked up this game from Bogmean right before the pandemic hit. So this game I've only had for a few years, but this game, man, this game is amazing. There was a few road trips in this year, and especially with how much older I was, I had a Nintendo Switch, but for some reason this game sucked me in and just wouldn't let me go till I beat it. Like I mentioned, I don't beat a lot of games portably, usually. On top of that, I've never really played a lot of Ratchet & Clank games. This game is directly responsible for getting me into the Ratchet & Clank franchise. Like I mentioned, I love all of the consoles. I love PlayStation, I love Xbox, and I love Nintendo. Out of the 3, my love for PlayStation is the weakest. So I didn't really get in deep with all the PlayStation exclusive franchises. And Ratchet & Clank was one of the ones I've missed. But because of this game, I was so excited to see Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart come out. It looked so good, and I don't own a PS5, but my brother does, and he bought the game, and it's really fun. And Ratchet & Clank Size Matters is just that, not necessarily Rift Apart, but it's very similar to the original trilogy of Ratchet & Clank games. It felt like exactly what they were trying to do, a portable version of a Ratchet & Clank game. This doesn't feel downgraded really in any way other than the visuals. This game was so impressive. It was a full Ratchet & Clank experience on the go. And especially back when this came out, which I don't remember, I think it was like 2007 or 2008 or something like that. This game would have been an impressive showcase of what the PSP can do. And I don't know how the PSP just did not destroy the DS because of games like this. The DS, in comparison, to me, is just a little kind of bad in terms of performance and quality of games. Overall, I feel like the PSP had just a much higher quality library of console-like experiences, while the DS sorta tried its best. I think the DS really relied far more on its gimmick versus how the PSP really tried to rely on the quality of the experience playing. And especially given the time these devices came out, arguably the PSP was subjectively more impressive than the DS, and I'm surprised as a kid I did not see this. Granted, the PSP was targeted at a more, 10 plus age group, and when the DS came out, it was targeted at a more like 4 and up group of people. So it's fair that I never really saw the PSP, but thoroughly impressed by Ratchet & Clank Size Matters is an understatement. One of the best games I've ever played portably, and I highly recommend it as one of the main games you should play on your PSP. Number 2 is a game I have been hunting for literally almost 10 years. I still haven't found a physical copy of this game. I go to the flea market like every other week. Every time I went to Bogmean, I hunted for this game, and I never found it. And to this day, I am still bitter about it. Dragon Ball Z Shin Budokai is number 2, and holy fuck buckets, man, am I annoyed that I never got to get this game physically. I did hack my PSP so I could have this digitally, but that's neither here nor there. But it doesn't change the fact this is an incredibly fun game. One of my favorite 2D fighting games ever. It's the reason why I play 2D fighting games. Not necessarily Smash Brothers included. It's more of a party game in my eyes, but in an actual purposeful 2D fighting game a la Tekken and Street Fighter, this is what got me into those games. I love Dragon Ball Z Shin Budokai. I'm a huge Dragon Ball fan. This game is so amazing in my eyes. The story, it was just retelling the story from basically Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z. It was fairly competent in doing that. There's some cool fun fights, but just the fighting, the characters, the moves, it just felt so tight, so polished. A very good example of the Dragon Ball Shin Budokai Tenkaichi games on the PS2 system back in the day. And they don't make them like they used to. I sound so boomery, but they don't make Dragon Ball fighting games like this. It's always like Dragon Ball Z Fighters or Xenoverse or Battle of Z. Those 3D style fighting games you don't very see often. Dragon Ball, Shin Budokai style games. Until recently, I think I saw a trailer for a new Budokai game in the Dragon Ball's gaming sphere. So I'll keep an eye out on that. But this game was just so amazing. One of the games I did spend serious time in outside of road trips at school even, because the PSP was very pocketable. I would take this to school and I'd play during lunch. I was that kid. I would bring a game system to school and play during lunch. This was before I was in like normal high school, like not my weird gateway college program stuff, but actual high school, just sitting in the lobby of the locker rooms, just playing on my PSP during lunch. And it was like 2018 or 17 when I got this game hacked onto my Vita, onto my PSP. So it was just a really strange experience for people just walking from the lockers or walking into the lobby to go to the lockers, just seeing a kid sitting on the floor playing on a PSP, like I'm some sort of retrophile. The system that's at that point probably over 10 years old. So people were like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I got a lot of weird looks from teachers, but because I was a nice, quiet kid, they didn't bother me much about it. So that was nice. But this game just has so many like intrinsic memories. I can't verbalize them. I just have like these impressions. This game definitely is an impression in my memory. That's why it stays at a solid number 2, being the second best game in my opinion on the PSP. Number 1, you probably saw this coming. I strongly believe that Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep is the best PSP game of all time. It is so good. I just can't sing this game's praises enough. This game is, from just beginning to end, being able to play the game 3 fucking times and get it's a different game every time. It's so good. I just love the combat. This was my first real Kingdom Hearts game. Like, I had Recoded on the DS, but it was a DS game. It didn't feel nothing like your actual Kingdom Hearts games. Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep is a real, fully blown Kingdom Hearts game. And even fucking Square Enix sees it like that. When they did the HD remasters of these games, Recoded just got a reanimated movie. You didn't get the actual game. Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep got a ground up remake for these games, a remaster for those HD collections with extra story content, and these characters are so crucial to the story of Kingdom Hearts. This is the earliest point in the timeline, and this game is so important to me. The combat, the storytelling, the gameplay, it was all of it. All of it is so tightly designed in high. I can't sing this game's praises enough. One of the most important games to me on the PSP. Frankly, this game deserves so much more than it did, and honestly, this game is number 1 for a very, very good reason. So many memories attached to this game. I just dropped easily 10, not even 10, more than 30, 40 hours into this game, and I lost literally, I think, like 5 or 7 hours of gameplay in this game, because when I got my PSP, I didn't know you needed an SD card in it to save. So I intentionally just put my PSP into sleep mode, plugged it in and stuff, made sure and just never took the game out until I could pop an SD card in the memory stick duos so I can save my game. And I fell asleep one time playing it in the car. It died, and I lost several hours worth of progress, and I was so mad. And that made me drop the game for like a week, but then I got my SD card finally, and I was able to play the game again, and I was hooked again. I was like a junkie on crack, man. I needed the game, man. I needed it. This game means so much to me. And that's why it's number 1 on this list. Is there any other games that I should have put on this list? Leave a comment down below. What would you have put on your list? I would love to hear. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And shout outs to the person who left this comment on screen here. You're the reason why this video is being made. Shout outs to you, and have a wonderful day.